Welcome to Capital Catch-Up, the podcast where we break down the latest developments in Congress. I'm Victor.
And I'm Lenny. Today we're covering a range of bills and topics that are making their way through the halls of Congress. Let's dive right in.
Our first bill is the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act of 2025, also known as Senate Bill 478. This bill aims to amend the way the Secretary of Veterans Affairs shares information with the Department of Justice.
The proposed law would prohibit the Secretary from transmitting personally identifiable information of veterans to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System unless a judge has made a determination that the veteran poses a danger to themselves or others.
This move is intended to protect veterans' Second Amendment rights by preventing their information from being used to deny them gun purchases based solely on their receiving benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs.
It's an interesting debate, as some argue that this bill is necessary to prevent the government from unfairly restricting veterans' rights, while others believe it's a necessary measure to ensure public safety.
Another bill we're looking at is Senate Bill 736, known as the Lieutenant Osvaldo Albarrate Stopping Prison Contraband Act. This bill aims to increase the penalty for providing prohibited items, including phones, in correctional facilities.
The bill would increase the maximum imprisonment time for violating this rule to 2 years. Additionally, the director of the Bureau of Prisons would be required to review and update the facility's policies on contraband within a year of the bill's enactment.
This bill is part of a broader effort to improve safety and security in prisons. The act is named after a correctional officer who was killed in the line of duty. We're also covering Senate Bill 463, the Protect Our Letter Carriers Act of 2025. This bill allocates $1.4 billion over 5 years to upgrade collection boxes and replace outdated keys with electronic versions.
It also calls for the Attorney General to vigorously prosecute cases of assault against postal employees and establishes a coordinator in each judicial district to oversee investigations and prosecutions of crimes committed against postal workers.
Furthermore, the bill requires the United States Sentencing Commission to update sentencing guidelines to treat the assault or robbery of a postal employee as seriously as the assault of a law enforcement officer.
Senate Bill 680, the Ending China's Unfair Advantage Act of 2025, aims to prohibit funding for the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change until China is no longer considered a developing country.
The sponsors argue that China's developing country status gives it an unfair advantage in international environmental agreements. The bill would require the president to certify that China has been removed from the developing country list in the Montreal Protocol and placed in Annex 1 of the Climate Convention before any federal funds can be used.
Senate Bill 825, the Fighting Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Act of 2025, seeks to provide treatment for PTSD and acute stress disorder to public safety officers, police, firefighters, and 911 dispatchers.
The bill notes that roughly 30% of these officers develop behavioral health conditions and that many die by suicide each year. It requires the Attorney General to propose a program that includes evidence-based trauma-informed care, peer support, and family supports, administered by the Department of Justice with stakeholder input.
Moving to health research, Senate Bill 1330, the Bolstering Research and Innovation Now Act, also called the BRAIN Act, aims to advance research and improve awareness and care for brain tumors.
Key provisions include a searchable biospecimen database, a glioblastoma therapeutics network, a national public awareness campaign for clinical trials and biomarker testing, and pilot programs to improve monitoring and care for brain tumor survivors. The FDA would be directed to issue guidance to ensure patient access to trials.
Senate Resolution 236 is a resolution calling for the return of abducted Ukrainian children before any peace agreement is finalized. It condemns Russia's forced transfer of at least 19,546 Ukrainian children, notes that only 274 have been returned, and urges their full return before any settlement.
Senate Bill 1599, the Midwives for Maximizing Optimal Maternity Services Act of 2025, addresses maternity care shortages by expanding educational opportunities for midwives.
The bill provides grants to higher education institutions to support midwifery and nurse midwifery programs, prioritizes students who will serve in health professional shortage areas, and seeks to increase racial and ethnic minority representation in the field.
Senate Bill 857, the Water Conservation Rebate Tax Parity Act, expands tax exemptions for certain conservation subsidies. It adds water conservation, storm water management, and wastewater management subsidies to the Internal Revenue Code, giving them parity with existing conservation tax benefits.
Senate Bill 2195, the Congressional Gold Medal Act, would honor the women of the U.S. Army Nurse Corps and U.S. Navy Nurse Corps who served in World War II. The bill authorizes a gold medal, duplicate bronze medals for sale, and placement of the medal at the Smithsonian and other relevant sites, recognizing their service despite segregation and discrimination.
Senate Bill 1890, the Carla Walker Act, creates a grant program for state and local forensic activities. It authorizes $5 million annually from 2025 to 2029 for DNA analysis, forensic genetic genealogy, and equipment upgrades, with reporting requirements to the Attorney General and a 2-year performance report to Congress.
Senate Bill 1829, the Strengthening Transparency and Obligations to Protect Children Suffering from Abuse and Mistreatment Act of 2025, known as the Stop CSAM Act, targets child sexual exploitation. It expands the definition of child abuse, enhances protections for child witnesses, and imposes new transparency and accountability obligations on tech platforms, while authorizing funding for victim support programs.
Senate Bill 2265, the America's Olympic and Paralympic Games Commemorative Coins Act, directs the Treasury Secretary to mint gold, silver, and clad coins commemorating the 2028 Los Angeles Summer Games and the 2034 Salt Lake City Winter Games. Proceeds, after a surcharge, would support legacy programs and promote inclusivity for people with disabilities.
Senate Bill 2096, the Daniel J. Harvey Jr. and Adam Lambert Improving Service Member Transition to Reduce Veteran Suicide Act, improves the Transition Assistance Program and the Solid Start Program by adding mental health resources, treatment options for PTSD, substance abuse counseling, and suicide prevention information. It also requires a joint report from the Secretaries of Defense and Veterans Affairs within a year.
Finally, Senate Bill 2431 makes appropriations for the Department of the Interior, Environment, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2026. It provides $1.256 billion for the Bureau of Land Management and $1.463 billion for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, funding land management, wildlife habitat, recreation, and endangered species programs.
In the Congressional Record, Volume 172, Number 84, from May 18, 2026, Senator Grassley warned about Iran's aggression and nuclear ambitions, supporting President Trump's actions. Senator Schumer sharply criticized Trump's proposed Department of Justice slush fund, called it depraved, and urged a war powers resolution to end U.S. involvement in Iran, while also condemning Trump's trip to China for failing to curb fentanyl flows. The Senate adjourned with several nominations and cloture motions pending.
As we wrap up, listeners should watch for further action on the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act and the Protect Our Letter Carriers Act, both of which could have immediate impacts on veterans and postal workers.
Keep an eye on the appropriations bill for the Interior and the ongoing debates over Iran and China, as those will shape funding and foreign policy priorities in the coming months.
Thanks for tuning in to Capitol Catch-Up.
We'll be back next time with more updates from Congress.
And don't forget to subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Capitol Hill.